All right. Okay. So we are all happy to record this session. Anybody against it? Raise your hand. Cool. Super. So yeah, welcome to I think it's like the third set of our innovation webinar series from Mindful Innovation. And we are very, very happy that Darrell Mann is joining us today. Yeah, I would like to introduce you as the owner of the only innovation company in this world, as you stated on your website, and you're like this yeah, innovation authority, if you want to also put it like that. You have got a lot of experience when it comes to systematic innovation. You've written a lot of books, a lot of papers. You're very well known in the trees field. So I could talk a lot more about you, but today we will talk about your book, about your new book, Future Proof. So I'll hand over the stage, the screen to you, and look forward to hear all about it.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. So hopefully you can see the screen.
Perfect.
All right. So yeah, the book has really come about, oh gosh, over a number of years, I would say. It's one of those slow realizations that the world is changing, and most of the organizations that we get to work with or observe are finding life increasingly difficult. And I think because they're realizing that being efficient is not the same as being resilient. And I think since Nassim Taleb published his book Anti-Fragile in 2012, that's the word that we've kind of been using to encourage organizations to think a different way. You need to be more resilient, and the best way to be resilient, or the ultimate goal, is to be anti-fragile. So the more the world throws at you, the stronger you become. But that's not what we're seeing at the moment. So I'll take you through a little bit of the rationale, and then the structure of the book and how it's evolved, because it has been a long incubation period. So the picture on the left there, I think, is one of the scary pieces of data. So I think we often talk about the Fortune 500 companies in America and how that list changes. But I think if you look at those lines on the left-hand graph and the colours, I think what you can see there very clearly is that the life expectancy of Fortune 500 companies gets progressively shorter and shorter and shorter. So that line gets steeper and steeper as we move closer to today. So there's a lot of turbulence in the Fortune 500 companies. In the UK, since Brexit, we've lost over 20% of companies in the country. And since COVID, that rate's just accelerated again. I think COVID has also demonstrated that efficiency inside organizations is a goal, but it's not going to help the survival of your company when the world really changes. I think we're also seeing, I'll say globally, but I'll try to pick out a few examples from the UK there of things going horribly wrong, but nobody gets the blame for it. And in fact, the Boeing CEO in the bottom left there, Dave Calhoun, he's resigned and he's leaving at the end of this year with I think it's a $24 million reward package for essentially destroying even more of the value of once prestigious and highly respected organization. So not only not getting blamed, but getting rewarded for making an organization worse than it was previously. And it just feels like that things are going horribly wrong, but nobody gets the blame for it. And even today, just sticking with Boeing for a second, then obviously, I think when things do start to go wrong, you get lots of media scrutiny and exploring and making sure that the company stays in the public eye. So even this year, using hand soap as a lubricant, wheels falling off aeroplanes, it's quite clear that there's stuff going on inside the organisation which the leadership team's still unable to do anything about. So this is a book that came out a couple of months ago, and I think it's going to become a useful side note to the anti-fragile book and to future proof, what we're putting out. So this is the unaccountability machine, and the subtitle of the book I love: Why Big Systems Make Terrible Decisions and How the World Lost Its Mind. And I think in many ways, AI is now accelerating that. AI is pretty good at efficiency, but it's terrible at resilience. And so the more organizations are using AI, and almost every organization is doing experiments these days, I think it's fair to say, then I don't think they realize that what it's doing is making leaders inside organizations, making managers inside organizations less and less accountable for what they're doing, which is ironic because I think most organizations talk about accountability. I think we've all been in those situations. Here's the famous Computer Says No from Little Britain comedy series. But I think we've all been in those situations where you've been on, having a conversation that you probably didn't want anyway on a call center. You want to change some of your banking details or pay an electricity bill or something. And because you don't quite fit the rules, then the only response you're going to get is frustration, because you don't fit the rules, and so therefore the person on the other end of the call can't help you. So unaccountability is when that feedback loop between customer and people that can make a difference inside the organization gets broken. And the world has accidentally, I think, created a whole series of these unaccountability situations, or accountability sinks, as Dan Davies calls them. And it's, I think, amazing that nobody consciously does this. It's just that when we outsource things, so life's more and more complicated, so we need help. So we bring in consultants, and they help in the short term, but actually they've made us weaker as an organization in the longer term. So this book came out towards the end of last year. So I think it was September, October last year, the big con, really just trying to make the case that particularly the big consulting companies create incredible harm inside organizations, again, accidentally. But make those organizations outsource the knowledge that they need in order to make themselves resilient. So not only does the system within the company go wrong, by outsourcing things to get help, you make it go even more wrong. And I think what comes out of all of that is a situation where you've got leaders who have got effectively no authority anymore inside the organization. So I think they will talk about, I'm accountable, but nobody goes to jail when things go wrong, because when the investigation happens, you realize that the systems that we put in place, it's the system that's gone wrong. It's Adam Smith's invisible hand that's taken away accountability from people. And so what have we learned from all this stuff? Well, I think the first thing we've learned, I think especially in the UK, is that much as accountants and lawyers are really, really important inside an organization, you should not put them at the top of the organization, because they don't understand systems. And I think anybody that doesn't understand systems has got no right to be a leader in any kind of organization these days. Accountancy, law are really important support functions. They're part of the system, but lawyers and accountants do not get caught what a system is. They serve within it. They should not be leading it. Beyond that, here's the cover of the book. We're still iterating the final version of it, but the important graphic there is picking out a red and a green, which I'll talk about in a second. But what we've discovered is that, to paraphrase the Anna Karenina opening sentence, all happy enterprises are the same. Each unhappy enterprise is unhappy in its own way. So there are millions of ways of running an organization badly, but there's very few ways of doing it well. And that really fits in with the whole Grizz philosophy. I would say millions of ways of solving a problem badly, very small number of ways of doing it well. So we've tried to collect together the principles on which organizations that do have a long and rich resilience, what is it that they've done within those organizations. So the heart of the book really is this red green idea, and this is a redrawn version of a Gary Larson cartoon, which I've loved for a very long time, and we've repurposed it here to think about a company as people rowing a boat. You've got people in red and people in green, and the people in red there's much more of them. They're much better resourced. The leaders inside the organization, the people steering the ship, they're also in red, and the ship's going round in circles, basically. And I think that red world is all about continuous improvement inside organizations, and you continuously improve your way to making the organization extinct. Yeah, and the problem I think is that what is going around in circles. It means that you've failed to understand that systems have an S curve associated with them. You can only improve a system so far before you get stuck, and stuck looks like this whack-a-mole game here. One of the tests that I very often apply with organizations when we've seen them for the first time: does life feel like this, where as soon as you improve one thing, a whole bunch of other things start to get worse? If life's like that, then you're at the top of the S curve, and you now need to do things differently. So differently is really all about you've got to make a jump to find a new way of doing things. And so the whole red world, green world analogy came from red world's really important for organizations to help them to climb the S curve, to do the improvement job. But when you are at the top of the S curve, when you recognize I do need to make a jump now, either because you're proactively going to disrupt a market or because COVID's come along, for example, and disrupted you, then you need a different mindset. And I think when I talk to the senior leaders inside organizations, what gets you promoted and what has got people promoted for the last 40 years is being good at the operational stuff. And so consequently, there's not nearly enough of the people with that green mindset. So when I talk about mindset, then again, the red world, green world comparison in the book recognizes that in red world, that's all the stuff that we get taught on MBA programs. Clear rules, clear direction. You can measure things. You've got processes in place. You can give everybody KPIs. Everything's clear, and you can run the organization like a well-oiled machine, in terms of the metaphor that gets used a lot. Whereas in green world, when you've made that brave decision to jump off the S curve, then everything's different now. The rules don't apply. In fact, your job is to systematically break the rules and find better rules, challenge assumptions. The knowledge doesn't exist. You've got to go and find it, create it from somewhere. And it's a very, very different way of living. And I would say that anybody in a systematic innovation organization, that's the world that we've recognized that we live in. And that's the reason why we are the only innovation company on the planet, in my mind. It's not the mindset that we get taught with. So when you look at organizations and you get to measure these things, you realize that there's an enormous imbalance between red world and green world, almost irrespective of geography or industry. You'd see that 94:6 ratio. And what that immediately does is says that, well, my ability to be resilient is now limited fundamentally by that 6% of people. That determines, if I apply von Clausewitz's on war philosophy of critical mass at the critical point, those 6% of people determine just how much change you can accommodate inside an organization. So we need more of those people. And the book talks about how do you create more of that type of person. It also then talks about, so how do you use the resources that you do have to ensure that your organization is moving in the direction of becoming more resilient and heading towards anti-fragile. So the book was going to be finished at that point. It's all about red world, green world, and then you realise, well, yeah, that's an important part of the story, but it's not sufficient. And it can't be, because if you understand systems again, then two components do not a system make. So the next big chunk that gets added to the book then was you need a blue world. And blue world is about really all the people stuff. It's how you align people, how you disseminate the values inside the organization. If you like, there's the leadership team, and it's the way that they see things, being able to coordinate red world and green world, yeah, helping to understand when you need more red, when you need more green, how you create more green when the organization's making these jumps. Yeah, how do you design the organization structure to change as it potentially is likely to during those kind of transitions? So Blue World added an important new dimension. In many ways, yeah, the Blue World chapters are the ones relevant to the leadership team in the organization. And I'll explain why that is in a second. Then you realize that I'm still missing elements of an essential system. And here I think we get to some of the, by rights, probably needs to be a book of it in its own right. At the moment, it's been called Horizontal Wisdom, which I really don't like the title at all, but I can't find a better title at the moment. So what's happening here is that when that blue world is trying to coordinate people, there's a realization that because last century was a century of creating specialists, you've got lots of specialisms inside organization. You've got marketing people, you've got the accounts people, you've got the legal people, you've got the engineers, you've got the software people and so on. And because of the degree of specialization that we've now got, it's increasingly like that those different silos are unable to talk to each other, unable to understand each other. And a lot of European companies have got different parts of the business in different countries. So geographically, you've got people also isolated from one another. And so the idea behind horizontal wisdom is you need people inside your organization, you need skills that can connect the dots between all the different silos. So in theory, that is your design community. Design, unfortunately, is taught as a vertical. It's your project managers. But again, also, unfortunately, they're educated as vertical silos. And so there's very little skill inside organizations to do this horizontal job of, say, breaking down the barriers between the silos, such that the different parts of the system that need to communicate and be working in harness with one another are able to do so. And I think the horizontal wisdom stuff, I think, really gets us back into AI territory, because AI needs training. And if the skills to connect the dots horizontally don't exist with the human population, then you've got no chance of being able to train the AI. And so you end up with AI solutions which unwittingly, again, have made your organization even more fragile, because you haven't been able to connect the dots across different domains. And that sounds a little bit weird, but an example I've been using for the last couple of years in the wake of the pandemic was the question of, should you wear a mask? And I don't know about Austria, but I think in the UK and a lot of Western countries, became a very, very controversial issue, because you've got different people with different opinions about the efficacy, the merits or demerits of wearing a mask. And what we were seeing there was, even though it's an apparently simple question, it needs an awful lot of knowledge in different disciplines. I'm an aerodynamicist by background, so I've got a very clear view about aerodynamically what the efficacy of wearing a mask is. And other professions will have their own views on the subject, but nobody's got sufficient knowledge to be able to make a meaningful decision about whether it was useful or not useful to wear an N95 mask or whatever kind of mask. Lack of horizontal wisdom meant controversy and dysfunction, basically. So Um, one of the things that Triz gives us is you need a system. If you're going to make your organization future-proof, it needs to follow the law of system completeness, which basically says you need 6 essential elements. And so ultimately, the book, you can say, okay, it's now finished because I've now got all of these different elements. So you've got the blue world, defining, leading, coordinating the overall system. You've got red world, whose job is to deliver value. You've got green world, whose job is to create the next value. You've got the yellow stuff, the transmission, basically connecting red world and green world together. And then 2 things I haven't talked about really. I'll talk a little bit about them, but you've got to be able to measure the right things. And a big part of our work with companies over the last 10 years in particular has been stop measuring stuff which is easy and start measuring stuff which is important. And so we've built a whole toolkit of ways to measure stuff that you need to know inside your organization. And then finally, on the right-hand side is you need to understand customers better. You need to understand how the market's changing, how society's changing. And what's come out of that is a desire and a need to be able to see around corners. I've stolen that title from a couple of books actually that have come out in the recent years, which have become very popular with leaders. Wouldn't it be great if we could see around corners? I think, ironically, neither of those books that have that title enable organisations to see around corners, but they've identified that it would be useful if you could. So what you find then, I think, is that here's where Triz, I think, gives us another uniqueness in the seeing around corners world, in that Triz tells you there's a very clear directionality. Everything heads towards ideal final result. And there are a bunch of trends that provide you with a very clear roadmap about, this is the trajectory that you're going to take in moving towards that ideal final result. So I think, again, only one innovation company on the planet. If you don't know this stuff, and I've not seen any other strategy books out there that do know this stuff and recognize the validity of this stuff. So consequently, that says that if I'm looking for a strategy book, there's not an awful lot to really look at, and it's going to help me. Having said that, there are books out there which I've certainly recommended to clients that want to know more about strategy. There's some of them there, and I think what common to all those books, certainly the 5 on the left-hand side, is they've understood enough about complexity and ecosystems to be able to say the best thing you can do strategically in a complex world is to become agile, is to become adaptable. So they don't understand the directionality part, but they have understood you need to be adaptable. And they kind of help in the sense that, okay, if your competitors are not adaptable and you are, even though you don't know your direction, if you're adaptable enough, then eventually you will find a direction that works. So it's better than nothing, but it doesn't, I think, define a complete story in terms of how do I design and implement the strategy of my business. And I think the final piece in that jigsaw then is that what those books effectively say is we need adaptable people inside organizations, and we need people to change. I think probably the biggest challenge in my whole career has been getting people to change. Whether as an educator or somebody, a leader inside an organization. And I think before I left Rolls-Royce, I spent 15 years at Rolls-Royce. I think I'd pretty much come to the conclusion then that it was a far better assumption to say that don't expect people to change. It's far better to reorganize the organization to suit the skills you've got, rather than try and hammer square pegs into round holes and expect that people are going to change. So the idea of an immutable human it becomes an important part, I think, of future-proofing your organisation. Don't assume everybody's going to change. In other words, because people love change, they hate being changed, and it's a far more future-proof strategy to assume that nobody's going to change, but you are going to redeploy people into the areas and the skills that you do need from them. So it's intended to be a kind of a positive message that says, where it's not so traumatic. It's a case of finding the people with the appropriate skills, putting them in the appropriate places inside the organisation. And then finally, again, just to hopefully give companies a warm feeling that we understand what future-proof is, but it's very definitely a journey. You don't need to be future-proof immediately. It's going to take you years, I think, to achieve that. But the good news, the thing that's working for you, is to the story of the two people being chased by a bear. One stops and puts on snowshoes, and the other one says, "What are you doing?" There's a bear coming, and the person putting on snowshoes says, "I don't need to run faster than the bear. I need to run faster than you." And so I think it's in terms of what should I be measuring inside the organisation, how adaptable are your competitors? And your number one job is to make sure that you're more adaptable than they are. And assuming immutable humans, but putting them in the right places, I think is the best way, the simplest way to get started on the journey and ensure that you do outrun the bear. So with that, big thank you for the opportunity. And because we're recording this, probably the best way to take questions is I'll put my email address on this slide, and people can reach out, and we'll perhaps, if there are questions requiring answering, we can publish them somewhere. But thank you for the opportunity.
Super. Thank you very much, Darrell.